figuring out how can we grow e-commerce in the way we want it to, but also grow the stores, because the stores are the window into our brand. That's what the way we like to describe it. And e-commerce is a way for our brand to reach anyone who can't come to our stores.
Hey guys, Kevin back with another whale sightings. Super excited. So one of the things that happened recently, and it is kind of interesting, at least like curious that we ended up talking on a day when Great Britain has been in the news all over the. But I was fortunate to meet half of you when I recently traveled to London, and we got a chance to hang out with some of our friends in your great city. One of the conversations that we ended up having were just about businesses that are popping up there, and kind of London's such a massive city. But I'm very interested to learn more about the story of Chai Guys. So, Chai Guys, if you would introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are, what you do, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Well, both of us could talk a little bit about the story, but I'll start us off, and then
Absolutely.
you can come in.
Well, before I make you go down the deep end of your story, if you would just tell them your name and your role, and then we can unpack everything that you guys have been up to.
Sure. So I am Gabriel, co-founder of Chai Guys. I kind of oversee now the store, side of the business, the growth of our physical presence. So through our warehouse and, retail central hub to all the cafes that we have in London and the growth of that. That's kind of my area of focus, except there's a lot of overlap with what Abs does, which is the e-commerce side.
Yeah. I'm Abs, or Abhilash, as you may have read from our website if you look. I kind of oversee the sort of digital e-commerce side of the business, but heavy overlap with Gabriel, because this is the brand that we both started together, and we were both involved right from the beginning, selling the chai ourselves. So that's where our roles have kind of grown to. But yeah, lots of overlap and exciting things.
Take me back to the very beginning, because one of the things that I remember, both from our chat in London, and then also just from poking around the website, is that you guys were both at some point consultants. And so how does, like, I'm always fascinated to figure out, like, how did you start there and get here? So what happened? What was that eureka or aha moment that made you think, okay, maybe it's time to really get to know this opportunity?
Yeah. How did we get into chai from there?
Well, I think, like a lot of people, young people in a big city, we were going through the motions of university, and we were looking for a role in the corporate world. That's what we're told to do from quite a young age. Not necessarily the corporate world, but just generally get a job, a 9 to 5 sort of thing. So that was our trajectory. But when we met at Deloitte, both of us had an absolute passion for food and beverage. And we would always, on a Friday evening, check out a new restaurant in London, or go back to an old favorite, which is Dishoom. We'd always go there on Friday. And we started talking a lot about, our past and everything. And Abs is from India. I used to live there when I was a kid. And one thing that, London was missing was really good, authentic chai. And both of us didn't have aspirations to stay in the corporate world forever. And so it was kind of an interesting idea that we could maybe start something that just didn't exist in London.
Yeah. And Gabe and I, we just met in the consulting world. We met as part of this group, and I think everyone there, when you're with the analysts, everyone's trying to kind of put up a front about how to be, and they're in a very networky corporate mode. I think what drew Gabriel and I together was just that we could kind of be very normal and natural around each other. And as Gabriel told you, like we kind of bonded over food, and we just became kind of good buddies who just used to meet up once every couple of weeks, and actually just go for some food. And we had that first 12 months there, and we just established just a good relationship, and we used to talk about such a variance of topics, but one of which was definitely just the food scene in different cities. We both had this Indian connection, so we were definitely more inclined to Indian food. And I think towards the end of that year, we started to like kind of speak about, all right, so coffee is such a big thing, but where is the chai not just in London, but like where is like the chai in the Western world, and why is there like such a heavy prevalence on drinks like coffee, matcha, bubble tea, but everywhere you go they do this form of drink called chai latte, which isn't quite well, which isn't the authentic drink. And it kind of just
Right.
it was just initially like a craving for it, but also then like why does this drink not exist in the way that we've believed it should be?
It's funny, and this is a sort of a dopey analogy on my part, but it's like it's almost like to a certain degree, one of the things that I feel like I see over and over again in food and beverage is the idea of you sort of take these homogenized, mass-produced situations that large audiences find them in, and you contrast those with like the care and the time and the focus that goes into putting something together artisan. A lot of times you'll see this kind of stuff at farmers markets or in boutique startups or whatnot. But it's like it's this is a it's the difference between people who've been having the air quotes chai latte trying your product for the first time and then going, oh, this is what it's supposed to taste like. What I've been doing was like sort of a copy of a copy of a copy. Have you guys seen, what's been so again, let's go back to the beginning, and you're starting this, you guys obviously like get along famously, and the culture that you're creating as friends um, helped lay the groundwork for what you're doing now, which is awesome. Totally makes sense. Um, what was the reaction that you were getting once you start spinning this out, and once the two of you are out there hustling, and it's a totally boutique thing? What's the kind of feedback that you're hearing from people in the community?
Well, actually, so what we kind of described as, I call it like stage zero almost. That was just the prerequisite, and I think it's important to touch upon like that we had like just an organic relationship first, and there was just this topic that used to just kind of pop up every so often. So yeah, like we both when we both were kind of deciding what we were doing or what we wanted to do, and I think things started to change when we discussed over a summer, like, hey, like I feel like we need to start this chai thing. Like this could be cool. Like, but you're never 100% serious about an idea straight from the back. You have to from the back. You talk about it often, and then it becomes potentially a thing. And we almost needed something to happen, and we took it upon ourselves to book a trip to India. Basically, we understood that okay, cool. We know that there's this drink, but this drink is heavily, heavily like tied to culture and tradition. And as much as we think we know, we didn't feel comfortable just calling ourselves like chai experts. So we took a trip to India in September 2018, right? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was a 9-day trip. And honestly, I think that trip just changed everything.
Yeah, it totally kick-started the journey of immersing ourselves in learning exactly how to start the business, because we needed to create the product. And by learning about the product, we were able to then come back to the UK with all the knowledge we had gained in India and start experimenting. So we experimented for about 8 months, getting all our recipes done. And then we tested it at a weekend market. And honestly, you ask about the sort of reception we got. Well, we had no idea what it would be like when we first launched, but it was like totally beyond what we could have expected. It was, people were super excited about trying the authentic drink. For the people that, the Western people who had traveled to India, they were excited to try something that they had had on holiday. So that was cool.
Yeah.
For the Indians, or South Asians who knew about chai, they were skeptical, but we had a mentality of have a taste. There's no obligation to buy. See what you think. And we really won them over with the product.
Absolutely. And we gave it, by the way, like when we launched like that first weekend, it was, I liken the feeling to like when you're young and you have like, and you're at school and you have to kind of do a presentation and you've been preparing for it for God knows how long, and you have to present it in front of the class. That was that feeling that I felt before the first day we ended up setting up the stall and selling this chai. But what we did in that process, and Gabriel touched upon it, we spent 8 months on experimentation, but we also touched and we also made our brand very, very heavy. So and prominent. So we kind of gave it the best chance. We were like, okay, cool. So the product has to be amazing. And we spent 8 months working on the product, but it was also the brand as well. And I've just got one of our tins, which we'll cover a bit later on. But our logo, we needed our logo to be something that reflected what we wanted Chai Guys to be. So it's a guy pouring chai, and we're called Chai Guys. But this guy is reminiscent of what you find in India, of someone who spends most of their life and craft actually making this drink. And chai is an art. So we wanted our logo to kind of encapsulate what we were as a brand from the very start. And we knew that, like, people's drinking habits, if they don't know exactly what it is, you need to kind of lure them in and make them feel comfortable. We didn't want to just appeal to South Asians, we wanted to appeal to also the Western audience. So we had a website, we had branded cups, we had yeah, we had the way that we were even going to pour and serve the drink, all down to a T. And then we launched. So we launched with really giving it the best idea. And as Gabriel said, the reception from day one was very good, and we were confident also in our product. Like, I remember there was a eureka moment in testing where we both took a sip and we just looked at each other and we just nodded and we're like, we're ready now. And that was amazing.
No, that's amazing. And if we'll talk about at the end like how people can find you, but if you haven't been by the Chai Guys website, it's gorgeous. Like, you guys have done such an amazing job. The UX is really smart. It's very elegantly designed. I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy looking at it. So anyway, um, so it sounds like you guys have been very thoughtful and measured in the way that you've gone to market. One of the things that, and then we can move on, but I am
Mm.
curious. Like, during those 9 days in Delhi, you said that everything changed, and it certainly sounds like that's the case. What did you find fundamentally that was different about the way, what, beyond like the cultural importance, the way that they were approaching making chai and honoring chai, and what did you take away from that?
So the main thing for me was that you can't cut any corners in the brewing process if you want the outcome of the drink to be incredible. So if you want it to taste like a beautiful, tea where the tea flavor is coming through nicely, the spice flavors are coming through nicely, and it's kind of a taste sensation journey. It's, a soul warming drink. You can't cut, any of the process out. You need to do it the long way. You need to respect, the process, which takes time. And we tried lots of different chai from different chai wallahs on the street, and they all had a different blend that they use, but they all respected the process. And not every chai was that good. Sometimes they'd add way too much sugar for both of our liking, but they all, went through the same motion in terms of the brewing process, and that leads to, or it should lead to, a very good cup of chai. And you do
Yeah,
touch upon,
amazing.
you did say about the cultural thing. I think that was really key for us too,
It was, yeah.
because you know the culture of chai in India is just, it's just so important. It's so integral to people's day-to-day lives,
Hmm.
whether you're going to work and you're picking a quick, chai up from a street corner, or you're having an afternoon chai with your family. It's so important to like immerse yourself in that and understand it, because there's only so much that we learned from being, you know, in the UK. Obviously, I used to live there, but even so, I was a younger person. I had to kind of experience it as an older person, I guess. So did Abs
Yeah,
at the source.
it was that trip had such a buzz and vibe to it, because here's Gabe and I, fresh out of college or university, as we call it in the UK, and we were there, and we turned up to India, which was very hot at the time. We were in shirts, but we walked around feeling like businessmen, old school businessmen, on a quest to find out about tea. And that was,
We'd accomplished nothing
yeah,
at
we'd
this point.
accomplished nothing. But like, I remember Gabriel had like an aura of like, yo, we're here for a business trip. And and to be honest, it was great. So we'd go out during the day, we'd chat to people, and we'd say, yes, we're thinking of doing this. And then people would receive us because we had a demeanor about us. And then it was every evening. We were on UK time, actually. Do you remember? We were up till 3 a.m. India time.
Even
But
later,
even later, even like 4 a.m. But so we'd have a long day out, and then we'd get back, and from the hours of like maybe 10 p.m. to night till about 4 a.m. in the morning, we had like a little Airbnb. We had like a mini little inside courtyard thing, and there was we had a whiteboard, and we would just brainstorm, and it was cool. We'd pace around, and we'd be like, okay, cool, so this is it. And every day we'd reach a breakthrough. We established that we 100% wanted to call it the name. Then we started drawing out logos, because we saw how people um, poured and served the chai. And it was all of those things. I can't explain exactly what it is, and it sounds cliche to say these things, but I would say that there was a magical feeling to that trip. I think we both felt that by the end of it, it was good. And I think what kind of was the cherry on top was that on the last day, it was the last day, we secured a deal with a tea supplier who we spent hours talking to for the last 4 or 5 days of the trip. And we were telling him, okay, so we want to serve this type of chai, and we also want to serve this type of chai and this type of chai. And he literally spent time understanding what we wanted, and like he handpicked the type of tea, explaining us what the properties of that tea were. So on the last day, we secured 21 kilos, and we had to negotiate with a suitcase supplier on the street. Put all the tea in the suitcase, and we came back with that suitcase full of tea, ready to experiment. So it was just amazing.
And that's when the 8 months started, and when you guys
That's
started
when the 8 months
perfecting.
started.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. No, that's super cool. And it's one of those things too that I would think when you get back and you're doing your pop-ups and people are tasting the samples, you know that the harshest critic that you have, that your response to that is like, well, we literally went to the source. We went to the old country. We listened to people. We talked. We didn't like everything that we tasted, but we like but your intentions were great. And it sounds like you really kind of come out on the other side of that with something remarkable. I have all sorts of questions. So one of them is like, okay, so now you're back and you're rolling things up. And so did you start with, which came first, your e-commerce play or the retail storefront? Like, tell me a little bit, unpack some of that for me.
So the first thing was the pop-up. So we started as a weekend pop-up in Brick Lane Market, which is a busy East London kind of cool. It's kind of similar to downtown Manhattan, actually, for any US listeners. So we started on a weekend pop-up, and that's where we were really testing the concept. So we got our proof of concept there, and then we very quickly opened in a 7-day-a-week market, which actually happened in an extremely random, well, not so random.
To be fair, Gabriel did say that he was like, this is what we want as the spot, right? And it was down the road, but it was 7 days a week, and it was like a fixed place. And then 13 weeks later, we managed to get it through a trial weekend that they gave us.
Yeah, I'd kind of gone to that market as a customer when I was in the corporate world, for lunchtime, and I was like, this would be perfect, for us to grow. And we did that trial weekend, Saturday and Sunday, in Spitalfields Market, and they said, well, why don't you stay on Monday for every other day moving forward? And so from going from a weekend market where we had kind of Monday to Friday to plan for the weekend, we just went straight into working every single day.
Yes.
So
it was crazy.
We had quit our jobs at this point, of course. So we had that time, but we literally had to do all our admin on our laptops on the side while the other person would serve chai, and then we'd swap out.
Yeah.
So it was very much cobbling together, like,
we were a two-man team at that point. We were a two-man team. The business was bootstrapped.
It's intense.
But we adapted. But we were young. We had we had energy, and we were ready to give everything. And that process, all of a sudden, we had to scale. And then, funnily enough, because before we got that location, we were putting out feelers for other locations. A month and a half later, after opening in Spitalfields, we then got secured and got told we can open in another location in Victoria, in the other part of the city. So within 2 months of being in Spitalfields, we had another location, plus a team of maybe 3-4.
Yeah.
And then Gabe and I doing basically every single day. And we were managing 2 locations. So it was crazy.
Yeah, we had to hire people while we were working and interview them at whenever we had a break and customers arriving, we could just quickly interview someone and be like, all right, you're hired. So it was a very difficult to kind of, make good hiring decisions, but we did actually. We were very lucky to have some good people back then. But we had 2 7-day-a-week locations within 6 months of launching a weekend market. And we were super stretched.
Yeah, we were super stretched. And there was
you guys sound exhausted just talking about it.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's like looking back at it, it's very nice, and I do
Yeah.
remember one moment where Gabe was stationed in Victoria and I was stationed in Spitalfields, and we'd I think we worked up was it like close to 80 days in a row or something,
Yeah.
and then we finally had a chance like where we both finished early, and we met up at one of our favorite food spots, and we just met and we were like, oh, this was pretty cool. Like, got two locations, just making money. Like, while we're sitting here, like,
Yeah, we managed to teach our teams on the ground at those two separate locations to close up for the evening without supervision.
Yeah.
So we could both meet while we had two functional locations, and that was the first time we'd done that. And that was a great feeling because it's like you have two places that are open, you're not physically there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's how you grow.
Yeah.
So you can spend your time on other things like e-commerce.
Yeah. And so
Well, it sounds
that was
like it's kind of an embarrassment of riches is the cliche way to put it, but it sounds like you guys are getting a lot of positive feedback and input right from the get-go. At that point, at what point do you start to consider like, okay, well, maybe we need to spin this into a D2C store and expand our footprint? At what point are you dealing with wholesale? Like, when do all of those things start to come into play?
So it's funny. We launched in May 2019. We had two locations by September 19. So we rounded off the year, and what we noticed that we had high demand for was people like, how do you make this at home? Like your blend is amazing, right? So Gabriel started working on these tins, and so in early 2020, these boys, yeah. In early 2020, the
awesome.
goal, or we started to work on them. We knew it would take a while, like 6, 7. It ended up taking like 8, 9 months, but we knew it was a process. So Gabriel was working on that, and the goal was maybe initially because the stores were doing well, we were hoping to open a third location, and we just thought, okay, like we'll do these tins, and maybe we can kind of get them stocked in like Whole Foods, Planet Organic, or some other big retailers out here, and that will be like another form of income. And so we ended up going back to India in March 2020 because, again, the stores were fully functioning. We went to go visit the tea garden in Assam, try out some different chai in Kolkata. And we then secured to open a place when we came back within 3 weeks. And then that was in March 2020. So we flew back, and instead of opening in 3 weeks, within 1 week of coming back, we had to close everything down because of COVID. So,
I find it quite crazy that on the 10th of March, we were negotiating a rent to open like on the 1st of April. Like that was what people's mindset was like, this COVID thing, it's obviously like slightly worrying, but it's not going to really affect life that much. Of course it did.
Right.
And so from about to open an extra location to make it 3, we had to shut our 2 locations. And that's when we really had the time and also the kind of impetus to just focus fully on trying to put our products online. Yes. Because that was the only way to reach customers at that point.
Yeah. So we kind of like
launched. It also. Go ahead.
No. Like that March, like that the time when we went in lockdown was the first time that we actually were just like at home, ready to like kind of have a fresh brainstorm. And we launched something like quickly, like off the back of that, whilst the tins were in development. But those few months that we did have to brainstorm, we started to put up a structure and a strategy that, yes, e-commerce has potential and we need to give it our full energy. And by the end of the year, we've opened up a Shopify 2 weeks or 1 week before Black Friday in November. And we had the tin shipment arrive a few weeks before that, and we were like, okay, let's see how it goes. And when we started running some online ads, in hindsight, that was I think from what I know about e-commerce, that was like the best time to be in e-commerce. So we launched straight in the deep end.
Sure.
Yeah. And that was crazy. Like that just surprised us. December, even though the whole of 2020, the business was getting hardly any income. December 2020, even with only one location reopened, because of ecom, we did our highest revenue ever for a business in that month.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, and I gotta imagine too, like it's one of the, you frankly just told us, like people were asking, how do I make this at home? It's like, they're kind of laying it all out for you. This is exactly the next step that you guys should take. And
Mhm.
then a global pandemic said, well, maybe we should hurry it up a little bit. So that's
That's exactly it. Yeah.
how interesting. That's so crazy. And well, and it's one of those deals too, where a lot of times I'll talk to companies specifically in food and beverage where it's like you talk about 2020 and 2020 ends up being for some like this sort of unexpected boon where we're all like stuck at home and trying to figure out how to, create some normalcy. And there is a big boost in that. How was the following year for you guys? Because I know like sort of you're right in the middle of, we saw it here in the States. Like, things are not, people were really hoping that, okay, when are we at the end of it? And the tunnel was longer than we thought. So how did the e-commerce part of your business progress as the pandemic extended?
So, as Ab said, like it started off incredibly fast. We sold a lot during that Black Friday Christmas period in 2020. And we were like, okay, this is a really big business line that we should add more products to. So we actually started developing some new products, and we released some homeware products, some custom made culleds with a local potter. Started actually doing cookies as well, and doing these bundles
Oh,
where you
cool.
could buy a tin and a cookie, or a tin and a ceramic.
Made with chai spice as well. That was
Yeah,
what
these
made
are
it interesting.
custom. Yeah, everything custom. And we noticed that that did extremely well. But then, like a lot of businesses, the iOS update, the infamous iOS update that Apple
Right.
did, that kind of messed up the whole tracking and
Mhm.
ads process, really hit our business, and it forced us to look at different advertising avenues because the standard Instagram, Facebook ads, and Google ads weren't going to be good enough.
Mhm.
And luckily, when sales started falling a little bit from e-commerce, life was getting somewhat back to normal, and our stores started reopening. And then we were planning for that third store that didn't happen in March 2020, but did happen in 2021.
Yeah.
So yeah.
21 was it
Awesome.
was quite a turbulent year. Like because we almost birthed this e-commerce business at the end of 2020, which was great. And now all of a sudden we're like an e-commerce brand, but also like store was like our bread and butter. And 21 was like, oh, time for the stores to reopen. But then they were like, one of them was having a problem, like was having a problem because the footfall was not the same. Then we were having to deal with like up and down lockdowns, the
Yeah.
uncertainty of that. And before ecom, like a lot of our energy and our commitment was to the stores. So when that came back, we definitely wanted to do that because we started to see the merit in our stores at a time when e-commerce started to be a bit slower because of just seasonal trends, etc. So it was kind of like adjusting and reformatting the business so that both can kind of coexist well and complement the other. And as Gabriel said, the iOS update definitely slowed things down. 21 holiday season was still good, and that was complemented by the opening of that store that we were supposed to open back in 2020 in Covent Garden. Um, but I think, yeah, it's crazy to say, but 2022 is our first full calendar year of business. Touch wood,
Yeah, it's
that
not.
that has not been interrupted by COVID. Like May 19 was we
Yeah.
launched, we were finding our feet. 2020 and 21 were just like turbulent. Like it was adjustment, it was adaptation. So now we're here and we're kind of getting our ducks in order and figuring out how can we grow e-commerce in the way we want it to, but also grow the stores because the stores are the window into our brand. That's what the way we like to describe it. And e-commerce is a way for our brand to reach anyone who can't come to our stores.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And and again, it's like not to sort of beat this drum, but it's like I think you guys do such an elegant job of the aesthetic around your brand. I think is really thoughtful, and so that's got to resonate. Like especially too, it's like the idea of drinking chai similarly to drinking coffee is contemplative and relaxing, and there's focus involved. So it's like you you want to be carefully considered as a consumer, I would imagine. Um, and so yeah, it just I think that that approach seems to I was gonna the pun that I threatened to use was steep itself earlier, but we'll just, yes, I'm really sorry. So anyway, the point being is you guys have done an outstanding job of that. And I think your story about the e-commerce shift with 14 and a half and sort of the turbulence of 2020 and 2021, I think is a pretty common story. Um, I talked to a sizable brand the other day who, basically just admitted that like when 14 and a half went through, it took them a few months to really sort of understand that like, okay, this is permanent. Like the change that has been made is going to affect the way that we use these tools. So coming out of that, Abs, I guess this is probably a question more for you. Like, what did you guys do to sort of refocus, and what are the channels that you guys have doubled down on? Where are you seeing, what's your sort of current marketing mix look like, and what's working for you guys?
Hmm. Um, yeah, like Gabriel and I, like we brainstormed. Okay, like is it a case because I don't think there's any harm in saying this. Like this business has come in both the store and the e-commerce side of things. Like they hasn't come from like past experiences. A lot of it is being adaptable and finding our feet. So initially, when it was the e-commerce the sales started to slow down. We were contemplating, okay, cool. Is it because we've maybe exhausted our customer list? Is it because of XYZ? One thing that definitely did help during the end of 21, and albeit a bit late, but we got there in the end, was Clavio. It was, I think, the year before, where our product was new, it hit the market, and all of the new customers that that we attained was great because that co-aligned with our ad strategy. But then what we realized is that we were starting to see the proportion of returning customers going up, but we had no narrative to actually retarget them. And maybe they could have seen an ad in paid social, but then after iOS 14.5, there was not that way for them to maybe be reminded. So Klaviyo was a great implementation that we did at the end of 21, which allowed us to form a narrative actually with our e-commerce customers and increase the LTV. So that was one thing that really helped towards the end of 21. And what it is also what was difficult for us on the e-commerce front is that because we launched at the end of 2020, and that was in a sense like a very unique case scenario in terms of even for e-commerce how busy that would be. Um, we we didn't even have any historical data to go off, right? So it was a case of, oh, are we slow sales because it's iOS 14 and a half? Is our customers maybe getting fed up with our product, or is it because it's seasonal? Like we were trying to figure that out ourselves. So that
Makes
was the
sense.
end of 21 that we did. But then 2022 has been about all optimizing that and understanding that, look, we need to grow the brand where stores and ecom is very interlinked. And that is often where that is centered around brand identity. And that's a conversation that Gabriel and I often have. Like, okay, cool. So the store does this. How can we leverage some of this customers coming from our store into ecom? How can we control the narrative? And how can we be a bit more efficient on ad spend? It's not like from what I've heard from the e-commerce community, like 17, 18, when you were spending loads of money, where you could spend money on ads and generate crazy ROAS. This requires a bit more thought. And we didn't want to be associated. Like one thing Gabriel and I always used to say is we didn't want to be that brand where you just see ads on us like everywhere you go online. Like we don't want to do that. We feel like that can cheapen the brand image. So we decided to like just calm down a bit on paid social, like, and then just try to revamp the strategy a bit in 22. And I think Triple Whale was helpful because we understood that, all right, we have a marketing channel through Klaviyo, Facebook, Google. Like, how do we manage all of this? And finding Triple Whale has definitely been the first step into sort of tidying up the analytics side and
Just to
figuring
add
out
to
that
what
e-commerce.
Abs said, we worked with another digital marketing agency to run
Yes.
ads, and I always felt there was a lack of clarity on where our revenue was coming from. To really, and not only where our revenue was coming from, but also what ad was performing well. What specific message we were pumping out as an ad was kind of
Mm.
generating return in terms of purchases on our website. And I hope that when we use Triple Whale, we'll really be able to see what exactly is working for us, and then focus our energies on that,
Yeah.
because then you get more bang for your buck. And also one other area that we feel really strongly about, and we've seen, has great opportunity, is the wholesale market. That's both a combination of targeting online by reach outs, and then a really slick sign up process, which is now live on our website. Or also, which is what Abs and I are going to do next week, we're going to just walk to cafes and speak to them and tell them, hey, you can use our product in your store to serve authentic chai and knock chai lattes off the menu. Like, this will actually be good for you, because you'll have happy customers and probably more customers when you use our product. So we're actually gonna be walking and trying to sell our product face to face with cafes too.
Chai Guys is spearheading the chai revolution, so we need to it can't all be through the medium of Chai Guys, but even if we do it through other premises and we make them understand that, hey, like, you're getting authentic chai now, maybe like narrate that to your customers, and you never know, they might actually start to care. And yeah, Gabriel just reminded me, like, the agency that we were working with up until a few months ago, we knew for a while that they didn't understand the brand. It's quite difficult if you don't know chai, and if you don't know like how rare it is for there to exist a chai brand in the Western market. It's going to be difficult for you to market. And as iOS 14.5 started to slow sales, we really started to see the errors in just how, because we're content kings. We have good photos, good videography on our Instagram, everywhere. And they could repurpose that into an ad, but just the language that they were using was very like cliche and cringe. And then it kind of just dawned on us that we need to just run this thing internally. Like, we have ecom now. We have the other form of revenue from the stores. Let's take a risk and like, let's hire internally for a guy, not just to run our ads, but to like really just help spearhead this digital e-commerce strategy and to tie in all functions of the business. And so we hired James, who we've hired as head of digital. He's ex-agency, and he was getting fed up actually working at an agency because he had exposure to all these different brands, but he saw how slow they moved. And, we suffered a little bit from that. And he wanted a challenge. He wanted to work and be part of the romanticism that is there when you're working with a brand. So the stars just aligned, and he ended up joining us a few months ago, and that's come at perfect time of triple whale implementation as well. So
those are fun stories to tell, and I promise I didn't bring up the marketing stuff for you guys to give us a plug, but I'm glad that it's working well for you. So so let me ask you, like, so give me a sense of, like, surely you guys have done a little bit of research in terms of like what the market in the UK looks like. Like, what do you feel like? What's the upside? What are you guys looking at in terms of the opportunity to grow your brand and whatever the flywheel or marketing mix looks like on your end?
So one thing actually that we're really pushing for at the moment, I actually have in front of me. So this is an exclusive look at a potential new avenue. Is we want to become a spice purveyors. So we want to serve or offer customers the chance to buy the best single origin unorganic spices, and you can buy it whole, you can buy it medium ground, or you can buy it very ground if you want to use it for baking, for instance. Because there isn't a company that we know in the UK that does really high quality single origin spices. There are a few companies in the US, but there's no one that does it here in the UK. And with our relationships with suppliers, it's something that we can do and offer to customers here. And so a lot of our strategy now is actually spreading our wings a little bit, expanding our product range, and hunkering down as well on wholesale, because our competitors in the wholesale industry really are not very...
they just don't care about chai.
I don't
it's almost
think
like it's a side thought, right?
It's seemingly based on the flavor of trying the product.
Yeah. Whereas we care, like, people, like premises or cafes or coffee shops that care about every product that they sell, they now have a company that literally started by only selling 3 or 4 different types of chai. Like, we made it a point not to sell coffee. And we want to, like, we learned in the last 3 years, we've learned about the spice game, especially the spices that we use in chai, and we know how versatile spices can be in all forms of cooking. So this is a natural step to kind of expand that universe, still spread the chai message throughout, and like, bring people more connected, I guess, to South Asian culture. And that comes from products like these.
As well as that, just to add,
So cool.
sorry, Kevin. Yeah, as well as that, one of the really important things is how we're communicating to customers, because I think a thing that we didn't or haven't done well thus far has been showing people how these tins can kind of fit into your day-to-day life. We need to show people that, chai is something that you can have every single day. It's a healthy, product, it's a healthy drink, and it can replace your coffee or at least exist alongside your coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we want to do moving forward is create really good video content that's, visually pleasing, but also just shows you how you can fit it into your morning routine or your afternoon routine. And, same goes for, going for these spices, how can you add this to your cooking, for
Mm-hmm.
instance?
Mm-hmm.
Cardamom is is one of the most versatile spices, and we use it in every chai that we make. It can also be used, to flavor rice, a very standard product. And it's not always the best when you bite into a cardamom pod, but when you manage to see it and put it to the side, and then you eat your rice, then happy days.
That's, yeah, couldn't have said it better
Yeah.
myself.
Well, it really sounds like things are going. It's been a phenomenal ride for you guys. I'm glad that to your point, that you're getting a year where it's like they're not some sort of weird global thing going on, as far as we know. And I wish you all kinds of continued success. I do have I have one, maybe two last questions. One of them is, what's next? So you've spoken to that a little bit. Tell us, if things go the way that you want, where would you like to see, what are your plans from here?
So, grand plans.
Let's look on stores. Let's let's cover maybe
We'll
maturing the
expand.
stores. Yeah, the
We'll,
stores.
we'll we'll talk about both. So obviously, stores and e-commerce, it's two facets to the business that are going to grow together. We have a very exciting opportunity to open a much larger office and warehouse in central London, and that will be a central hub for managing e-commerce operations. But it will also be an immersive event center where we can do corporate events and really even tea tastings and invite companies and people who want to learn about tea and chai down. And that's going to be a really kind of interesting growth opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
as well as growing the individual stores. We have a really cool new concept idea, which is to combine a bakery and our chai cafe concept. So it's kind of like a bake house with chai. So you see a lot of coffee shops with a bakery element, but you will probably never have seen a bakery with a chai element. And so that's a really interesting avenue to go down. And then, of course, I'll let Abs talk about the e-commerce growth.
Yeah. E-commerce and stores, they're like tied at the hip, so it's very difficult to talk about one and completely like omit the other. And we know that like our business it started off with stores, and it's important to mature the stores concept now. As we increase our brand presence, we increase our capability of getting bigger and better spots in London. And as I mentioned earlier, that store, that for a customer who's never heard of Chai Guys, you walk into that store and you taste fantastic chai, and you see that this company or brand takes care in every element that they do, and that they sell some of the products that they sell online also in the store. All of a sudden, you've built a personal connection with that brand. And as much as we talk about all forms of marketing, for chai guys at least, I don't think there's a better way that a customer could experience the brand. And they taste that chai, they think it's absolutely amazing, and then they see that you can buy a tin. That's great. Then they buy it, and then maybe they go back to wherever they're from, if they're not from London, and they can kind of keep up that narrative with us via e-commerce. So it's about us keeping products in line with that narrative, really. So whether that be chai, whether that be spices, whether that be anything else in the homeware field, or anything else to do in the healthcare field, it's about just making sure that we are recognized as a brand with soul, and one that people are cool to come to us and buy on our website and on our e-commerce platform, whether that be through store or an online ad.
Fantastic. No, it's super exciting. Obviously, you guys uh, are right in the midst of a journey that sounds like it's continuing to bloom. I wish you terrific success. Can you tell me, where can people find you? Tell me, like, and where do you ship? Like, I'll harass you in a minute about when your Austin operation's going to spin up. But in the meantime, tell me how they find you.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize you were talking to us from Austin. That's a lovely city, great food, great barbecue. We pretty much ship everywhere. So you can, reach us on chaiguys.shop
Hmm.
and, order online. If you want to take a lovely holiday to central London, we also have physical sites in Spitalfields in East London, Covent Garden in central London, soon to be West London too. So that's always a great way to experience us. But online is great if you're further afield.
Yeah, and as for our US customers,
Awesome.
shipping is proving to be a little bit expensive, but we do still see quite actually a surprising amount of US customers, and we're thinking of ways to make that cheaper and better because a lot of the US customers that we have are ones that have visited our store, tried the chai, purchased the tin, and then they need a top up. So we're working on ways to just make that shipping cost a little bit more worth it. Maybe it involves you buying chai for the year, but we'll definitely incentivize that with some discounts. So yeah,
Awesome.
chaiGuysUK.com or chaiGuys.shop.
Amazing. I'll assume that most of them didn't corner you at a bar in London, but at the very least, super charming to hear your story, guys. Gabriel, such a pleasure to finally meet you. Abs, nice to see you again. I wish you guys all kinds of success. Please keep us posted on how you're doing, and thanks for spending a little bit of time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Pleasure. Good to
Kevin.
meet you, Kevin.
Great to meet you.